Okay, well, I just want to welcome you all and thank you for being here tonight. And the topic of our conversation is going to be understanding stress during COVID-19 and understanding stress in terms of, as a parent, how do we manage stress? How do we learn to work through some of those challenges? Um, and also, how do we move forward into staying hopeful and in a positive place? Well, there are so many things that are unknown about the future. Um, so basically, stress is not a bad thing in terms of positive stress. And stress is one of the things that our body deals with on a regular basis all day long and all night long. And stress can come in forms such as hunger or thirst or fatigue. And those are just signals that go to our brain that indicate that, okay, we need to eat now. I need to drink water. I'm cold, so I need to put a jacket on. Those are typical healthy physiological stressors. And then, of course, there are destructive patterns of stress, and those can occur when things are not controlled and not predictable, and things become a little challenging when we have big changes and transitions like we're having right now in terms of COVID-19. So some other stressors that we're experiencing right now, especially parents are experiencing, is the challenge of homeschooling. Parents have lost jobs. They have a loss of income or a huge decrease in income. The schedule all of a sudden has changed and looks very different. Some of us have family and friends who live in places that have been impacted very significantly by the virus, and we've experienced loss. I lost a friend who works in Winslow. She worked at the hospital there. And we're also dealing with food shortages. And I know that as we watch the news every day, we're seeing more and more coverage on food shortages. And we're also experiencing a bunch of government intervention in terms of should meat packing plants close? Should they stay open? How do we manage this huge economic stressor that's impacting all of us? There are also mental health concerns that have to do with a huge change in lifestyle, loss of income, just all these shifting patterns of normal that are abnormal can create anxiety and uncertainty. So we have many, many, many stressors that we're coping with every day, whether we're consciously aware of them or not. So stress creates either resiliency, which you see over here on the right, and that's when stress occurs in a predictable, moderate, and controlled fashion. That's what creates what we call resiliency or strength to handle other stressful events. But stress that's unpredictable and that is severe and that isn't controlled can cause us to feel vulnerable and make us vulnerable to more stressors that may occur in the future. So what we want to talk about tonight are some of the things that you as parents can do to make stress more predictable, more moderate, in other words, less intense, and to give you some strategies to control your environments a little bit. And that has to do with having a schedule, limiting media, and we'll talk about all those things. So what we want to strive for is resiliency by moderating our behaviors. So if you look over here again on the right side of this graph, when we see predictable, moderate, and controllable stress that creates resilience during a time like this or a pandemic, we see that a daily structure, routine, is very important. If you can carve out time for family meals, at least one a day, That's a time for family to come together and feel close. If we can limit our exposure to the news, I know a lot of people that I talk to have the news on in the background all day long. And if we can take little breaks from that, because the brain still picks up on that, our ears still hear all that information, and that can be extremely stressful having that go on in the background, and people talking about death rates and refrigerator trucks and the political arguments about what's too soon or more people going to die, all of those things that we're exposed to on the media. If we limit that, and I limit my media exposure now to 2 times a day. And that's part of my daily structure, daily routine. Exercise, it doesn't have to be crazy exercise where you go out and run 20 miles. I'm just talking about a walk a couple times a day, taking the kids out for a walk a couple times a day, some sort of exercise type activity. If you have a trampoline in the backyard, whatever that looks like. And then reaching out and helping other people. Believe it or not, that strength of caring for another person can help diminish the impact of stress on people. And the other thing about the strength of relationships that is important to know is that the stronger and more supportive that the relationships are around us, the less the stress is going to impact us. In other words, it will mitigate the effects of negative stress. And it's really important to get good sleep, however you need to do that. And I always use myself as an example because initially when this all started, my sleep was very poor. I was waking up, I was checking the news. I knew I was going to get it. I was, trying to make sure my house was clean. Just that whole stress going on in the background interrupted my sleep to the point where I myself researched, okay, what can I do before bed? What can I do during the day in the context of this neurosequential model to help my brain become more regulated so I get good sleep every night. So stress does create exhaustion, and it's important to know that we might be sleeping a little more, or our sleep may seem a little interrupted, or we may get tired or fatigued in the middle of the day. We may want to nap once in a while, but good sleep hygiene is a really, really important behavior for minimizing the effects of stress. And then, of course, staying positive and staying future focused, and especially around our children, not projecting our fears or our concerns, but having those conversations for other adults in our environment, and saving the conversations that are positive and future focused for when we are around our children. So some of the things that will create vulnerability during this time are when our stressors become chaotic and severe and prolonged and uncontrollable. So things that will create vulnerability in all of us will be to not have some kind of daily structure. Now, not every minute needs to be structured, but a daily routine where it's controlled and kids know what the expectations are is very, very important. And we want to be careful we're not doing too much comfort eating, because then we don't feel good and we don't feel good about ourselves. And again, limit that media exposure. Try to get out, try to take your deep breaths. Try not to emotionally isolate, and try not to be focused just solely on ourselves, but reach out and connect with other people. And being aware of sleep disruption and that negativity and how that can impact us in terms of stress. So just being aware of all those things is important, so that we can shift that pattern to create more predictable, moderate, and controllable stress in our lives. So when our body stress response system becomes activated, it requires emotional and physical energy, and prolonged stress creates exhaustion. And so just expect while this is going on to be a little more fatigued, a little less capable of focusing, and don't be surprised if you find yourself more irritable, and just be gentle with yourself and other people, because we're human and we're perfectly imperfect and we respond like human beings. And I think that's the biggest gift that we can give each other during this time, is just to be gentle and honor the ways in which we all cope with stress. So big piece that I want parents to be aware of is this is a diagram of the brain and 4 different parts of the brain. I know it doesn't look like the brain, but it's just a teaching model of the brain. For parents to see that the lower parts of the brain, like the brainstem and the diencephalon, are where some of those lower functions occur. So the brainstem develops early on after conception, and that's where the organs form and the body functions are created. On up to movement, and then emotions, and then up at the top of the brain there you see something called the neocortex, and that's the part of the brain where learning occurs. And so when we're in a regulated, calm, alert state, the neocortex is open for business and it is operating at 85% capacity. So we have all kinds of opportunities to teach and to have our kids learn when our kids are calm, alert, and regulated. If our kids become stressed and become dysregulated, the ability of our cortex to learn greatly diminishes, and only 10% of that part of our brain becomes available for learning. And all these other lower functions in the brain are activated, especially emotions and states of alert, and behaviors. And then if a child is terrorized or terrified or scared that something's going to happen to parents or something's going to happen to a family member, that ability of the neocortex to function becomes even more diminished. So it's really important for parents to know that when we're trying to teach our kids and trying to help them acquire knowledge, we need to keep them and have them in a regulated, calm state. So if a child's running around like crazy and they've just eaten a bunch of Captain Crunch sugary cereal and they're kids or siblings are fighting with each other, and parent has just had it and says, all right, sit down, you have to do your schoolwork now. Not very much of this neocortex up here is going to be available to acquire information. So it's important always that we regulate and get the kids regulated, whether it's with some sort of deep breathing or movement or after a walk or dancing or rhythm, but that our kids are in a calm, regulated state before we try to teach them, and that they feel that the relationships around them are nurturing and attuned and attentive and caring. So what's most important right now to understanding stress and to coping with stress and creating resiliency out of this time rather than vulnerability is to be aware that our children need to feel safe and supported by the loving relationships around them. And that for parents right now is a 24-hour-a-day job. When school's going on and kids are going to school every day, they have that at school and then they come home to that, and everybody's got moderation in their world. So I know this is a challenging time for parents with their own stressors. But those safe and supportive, loving relationships around our kids are going to lessen the effects of the stressors that we're experiencing right now. And when we create that feeling of safety and support for our kids, it helps us and our children stay calm so that we can navigate these stressors with less fear and less reactivity. So I'm just going to review some of those things that are helpful in terms of lessening the stressors and in building resiliency while we have another month or so left of school. So it's very important to structure your day. Our children are more tolerant to stress when it is introduced in predictable ways, such as daily chores, daily routines, morning and especially bedtime routines are extremely important. And bedtime routines are probably one of the most significant times of the day to introduce that same routine and to make sure kids feel safe and they're regulated. And that can be done with touch, with music, with stories, with anything that's repetitive and rhythmic and predictable for them. The second thing is having family meals. And what I love about the family meals is that it doesn't have to take long, but everyone's at the table together. Everyone has a minute. There's time to express our feelings, to talk about what happened during the day, and to be heard, which is so important and so powerful. And again, to limit that media exposure, just like coronavirus, emotions are very contagious, and kids will sense when we're anxious and upset about something that we see on TV. So again, just a reminder to have the TV on in moderation, which means limit overexposure, and try to envelop that into your daily routine when you check in with the news. So exercise, Dr. Perry, who is the person responsible for sharing all of this information about brain development with us, says that in terms of exercise, the only way to move from high anxiety states to calmer, more cognitive states is rhythm. Patterned, repetitive, rhythmic activity, such as walking, running, dancing, singing, or repetitive meditative breathing, which is just mindfulness around deep breaths in and exhaling slowly. And all those things can be done at home in a structured environment where it's made fun for the kids. And then again, to reach out and connect with other people, connect with family who don't live in the area. I know my nephews and nieces and my daughter, they check in with me all the time. I think I'm their big project right now because it's me here with the 3 dogs. And they're just, they're adorable. And Dr. Perry says the most powerful buffer in times of stress and distress is our social connectedness. So let's remember to stay physically distant, but emotionally close, and reach out and connect. This is all new, and it's okay to reach out and seek help and ask for assistance. It's really important that as parents and adults around these children that we really take care of our needs so that we're in a good place to take care of them and help them stay regulated. And again, the most important reason to regulate our kids right now for parents is this challenge of homeschooling. And again, to remind you that kids don't learn unless they are in a calm, regulated state. Um, and then helping other people. Some people who've experienced adversity in the past are more sensitized and more vulnerable. Um, some people may have experienced loss of food or poverty, racism, violence, all of those. Um, and if we reach out and help those people, they can avoid some of those extreme stressors and being activated into a stress response space. So I know I reach out to my neighbors, they're older and they feel vulnerable, and I try to connect with them every other day. They get great pleasure in going to Costco once a week and hunting all over the state of Arizona for toilet paper. So whenever they score a big hit, they offer me toilet paper. So I have enough toilet paper to get through this. But it's just a sweet little thing that's come out of helping others that helps us feel good. And again, mitigates the intensity of that negative stress. Healthy sleep, again, be mindful about how your kids are doing with sleep. And again, I talked about the fact that stress is exhausting and we may sleep a little bit longer, we may wake up more, but it's important to get that exercise. And if you can wind down with calming activities for the kids, that bedtime ritual is huge. A lot of parents are getting weighted blankets because they help the kids sleep better. A lot of my friends are buying weighted blankets. And really avoid that late night binge eating and screen watching. And then of course, just stay positive and future focused. And when we stay calm and regulated, everyone around us will be less distressed. So it's important, if we follow these 8 little rules of thumb in terms of creating resiliency and having positive stressors, controllable, predictable in our lives, we will feel less distress and we'll come out of this with greater personal strength and resilience while we're practicing good self-care and we're relying on others and really connecting with people who are less fortunate than ourselves. So just important things to remember from tonight is that COVID-19 related stressors are going to decrease our kids' abilities to learn right now. And so please don't expect too much of yourself as parents in terms of delivering home education. Remember that these stressors can create exhaustion, and that in the face of these stressors, our most mitigating influences are in the strength of our relationships. And just don't expect too much, and reach out to our most vulnerable, staying physically distant and emotionally close, and really honor our differences in terms of how we all respond to stress. And some people are going to be sensitized and have a more intense stress response. And other people are going to want to kind of check out and pretend like this isn't happening. And other people are going to find themselves more irritable than they used to be. And that's okay, because we're all, like I said, perfectly imperfect. As a mentor of mine once taught me. And in honoring our differences, we don't take things personally and we don't overreact. We honor those around us, which again mitigates that stress. So most of this information that I presented to you was created by Dr. Bruce Perry, who is a neuropsychologist and a neuroscientist and a child psychiatrist. And he wrote a very famous book called Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. And recently, Psychology Today published an article based on an interview with him. And that's where I took this material from with his permission. And it's this first resource on here. So if you all want to take a screenshot of this, these are 3 great resources for managing stress. The second one is a conversation he had with Oprah a couple weeks ago about stress and distress. And then this YouTube video that he did, I love the title. It's Staying Sane While Parenting with Shelter in Place. So it's for parents, and it's about the challenges specific to parents during COVID-19.